guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video where we are going to be chatting all things cycle syncing for connecting to your feminine energy. This is a video that I feel like is so overdue on this channel and I am so excited to be chatting about this topic. For anyone who's new here, my name is Amara. I am a yoga teacher. I also just do a lot of work with deep feminine healing, and you can find all of that on my online studio, which is called the Soul Shala. But with that being said, we're going to dive straight in. The reason I have decided to sit down and finally chat about this topic is actually because it is something that we are exploring on Soul Shala at the moment with our new series, which has released called Lunar Wisdom. But I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on in the video. For now, let's dive straight into cycle syncing for feminine energy. So as we begin, I really want to just give you an idea of what cycle syncing is and why it's important. Now, for those of you watching this video, you will know that as women, we tend to have a menstrual cycle, and this is something that we will be very familiar with, but we might not actually understand the mechanics of what's going on. So as women, we tend to follow the two rhythms. We have the circadian rhythm, which you probably heard of. This is a 24-hour rhythm that wakes up in the morning, goes to bed in the evening, and it moves through a cycle of peaking and coming down. And this happens every single day and it refreshes. Now, men move through this circadian rhythm every single day, day in, day out. As women, we not only have the circadian rhythm, we also have what's known as the infradian rhythm. I like to think of these two different rhythms as the circadian rhythm is the sun rhythm, the infradian rhythm is the moon rhythm. The infradian rhythm is one that works in a much longer cycle, roughly about 28 days. This is the rhythm and the cycle that our menstrual cycle follows. And because of this infradian rhythm working with the circadian rhythm, we find that not every single day is the same. Our hormones don't necessarily refresh every 24 hours. They have a slightly longer rhythm to move through, and this means that on a day-to-day basis, we are not always going to feel the same. We are moving through this moon, this lunar rhythm, whereas the circadian rhythm is the solar rhythm, and we're working with a bit of a balance of both. So whereas men tend to follow this solar rhythm, this sun rhythm of the circadian rhythm, we also have the infradian rhythm, the lunar rhythm, that really governs us within this cycle. Now, what does that mean for you as someone who may experience a cycle? This means that with this circadian rhythm and infradian rhythm working together, that we are not, as women, operating with the same set of hormones or circumstances every day during our cycle. We are moving through a little bit of a wave throughout the month. And that is why the concept of cycle syncing and the importance of cycle syncing, I really feel, is beginning to take center stage in a lot of the feminine wellness areas and feminine health areas that we're seeing currently. So with that being said, let's dive into all of the phases of your cycle and begin to understand this infradian rhythm. So your cycle, let's start with the bit that you probably know the most, which is the time of menstruation, your bleed, your period. This is the beginning of your menstruation cycle, which tends to last in and around 28 days. For some of us, it can be longer. For some of us, it can be shorter. 28 days is kind of like that happy middle point. But this is the beginning of this menstruation cycle, the time of menstruation and your bleed. This is known as your inner winter. Now, for many of us, we will know that when we are in our menstruation cycle and we're in our time of menstruation, there's not a whole lot of energy going around. We can sometimes feel lethargic, we can feel just a little bit heavy and tired, and this is because this menstruation time is correlated with our inner winter and our new moon phase. This is a time where the energy is at its lowest. There is a lot of internal shedding going on. There is a lot of symbolic shedding and renewing and releasing that is occurring, that is preparing us for the cycle ahead. During your menstruation cycle for women, we are the most intuitive at any point in our entire roughly 28-day cycle. This is our most intuitive point. This is when we are most connected to that deep intuition, that deep knowing. It's also when we can be a really clear channel for any spiritual lessons or guidance that might want to come through, whether that be through guides, whether that be through tarot cards, whether that be through prayer or meditation. This is when we are most tapped tapped in to the wisdom of the cosmos, if you will. This is when our womb space is really, really open, which is actually the seat of women's connection to whatever you believe is above you, the universe, the cosmos, the divine. The womb space is where we hold that connection. So when we are in this time of menstruation and bleeding, this is when we are deeply connected to the space. And naturally during that time, we are being asked to slow down and come within. This is a time of deep internal work, and it's a time of really softening your workouts, really allowing yourself to take it slow, eating a lot of really iron-rich foods. It can be really lovely to include some ceremonial cacao during this time. It's really high in magnesium. But this menstruation time is unbelievably sacred and is one of the most important parts, obviously, of our menstruation cycle. We're going to circle back to that, but this marks the beginning, and it's the time that most of us understand and know of our menstruation cycle. Once your period ends and your bleed has ended, you move into what's known as the follicular phase. This is often correlated to your inner spring, and it's very connected to the waxing moon phase, so as the moon gets bigger in the sky. The follicular phase is a time of intentions beginning to grow, your energy is beginning to rise, you've got estrogen rising up, which just gets you feeling really, really fresh within yourself. You're excited for new beginnings. This is also a really beautiful time of initiation and forward action. This is a time when our movement practices can begin to become a little bit tougher, a little bit more active and dynamic. You may find that you want to include some slightly higher impact forms of movement into your daily routine. But this inner springtime, more than anything else, is a really, really beautiful time for you to become a little bit more outward. It's a great time to try on new clothes. If you're buying clothes, doing it in the follicular phase is the best time, because it's when you're feeling probably closest to your truest self. The follicular phase then, after this, leads on to our ovulation phase, which is roughly in the middle of our cycle, around day 14, lasts about 3 to 5 days. Your ovulation phase is known as your inner summer, and this is also connected very much to the full moon phase. There are also so many other ways that we can connect to these phases and really understand them, whether it be through feminine archetypes and whatnot, but we're going to stick to this is your inner summer, this is your full moon phase. This is when your feminine energy is at its most magnetic, it's at its most luminous, and you're really feeling the biggest and boldest version of yourself. This is when you most likely are feeling most extroverted. It's a fabulous time for you to do presentations, to be social, to go out and have a new date, or to really just enjoy being very, very external, because this is the time where your energy is at its highest. You can really pull in those high impact workouts if that's what you enjoy. And it's a real time of you just shining in your fullest. And it's probably the time where we feel, again, the most confident, the most energetic during our menstruation cycle. After our ovulation phase is when we really tiptoe into the luteal phase, and this is what makes up kind of like the majority of the second half of our cycle. The luteal phase is a real slope. It starts off very slowly and then it really deeply descends into the few days before our next bleed. The luteal phase is connected to our inner autumn, and it's connected to the waning moon phase, so as the moon begins to get smaller in the sky. Now this inner autumn, this luteal phase, is probably the phase that most of us struggle with, but the most important phase for us to understand in terms of cycle syncing and in terms of tapping into the real depth and potency of our feminine energy. So the luteal phase, our inner autumn, all of the energy begins to come back down. We begin to see a rise in hormones such as progesterone, and this is when we also begin to see the end of this infradian rhythm, especially as we get closer to our bleed. The infradian rhythm is coming to an end. During your luteal phase is when you are most likely to experience any symptoms of PMS. Some of us may experience these a lot more than others, and also if we have any hormonal imbalances that we're working with, which can happen for so many reasons, they tend to show themselves within the luteal phase the most. Now, the biggest issue that we sort of see coming into the luteal phase is we've just been up here in our ovulation phase and we've been so outward and so energetic, and it's all of a sudden almost like teetering off a cliff and going down. The energy cannot stay here. it has to come down. And this luteal phase is one that, if we meet with resistance, can create an awful lot of imbalances within us. It can lead to burnout, it can lead to longer cycles, it can lead to far more intense PMS symptoms as well, just to name a few things. Now, the reason that we have to acknowledge this luteal phase and we have to really understand the depth of this luteal phase is, the truth of the matter is, as women, we are more in tune with the moon than we are with the sun. We were never meant to be linear. We were meant to be a little bit more lunar and a little bit more fluid. If we think of the masculine as being that really standard constant that is so beautiful and so divine, the feminine is waves, the feminine is fluidity, and we mimic that within our own inner cycle. The luteal phase is a time where our focus is heightened because we're tying up loose ends before this cycle ends. It's when we begin to become more intuitive. It's a really beautiful time to explore shadow work. It's also a really, really lovely time to just begin to bring the energy back down. My biggest bit of advice during the luteal phase is to spend lots of time grounding and earthing. It's ruled by the element of earth because it's really all about bringing the energy back down. During your luteal phase, it's really important that you don't continue to push for the movement practices you may have had during your follicular or ovulation phase. The luteal phase asks for really low impact, gentle movements such as long walks, low impact Pilates, gentle hip opening slow flows like we do on Soul Shala. This is a really, really important and sacred part of your cycle. The really good thing about this cycle, this part of your cycle, is it's all things cozy and sensual. This is the time for warm drinks. It's the time for nourishing meals that help you feel full. It's a time for slowing down. And each day as you move through the luteal phase, you become more and more connected to your intuition, more and more connected to what's going on internally. You might even become a little bit more introverted as these days goes on, leading up to your next bleed, your next menstruation phase, which again is that deeply intuitive shedding phase, renewing phase. The biggest thing you can focus on in your luteal phase is thinking about what served you in the cycle that has passed and consciously releasing anything that is no longer working for you, setting that intention, allowing it to be released with your next bleed. Now, with that being said, you should now understand a little bit about what your cycle looks like and the different phases of your cycle. Now, the question is how can we use this understanding and use this idea of cycle syncing and slightly adjusting our routines, and maybe how can we do that more so, but how can we use that to really tap into the depth and the potency of our feminine energy and use this as a bit of a superpower rather than an inconvenience, which I know a lot of us have kind of been encouraged to feel about our menstruation cycle due to the powers at play, the patriarchy, the world is the way it is, society the way that it is. But actually this is such a sacred cycle that can really help us tap into our power as women, and the way in which we do that is through this power of cycle syncing. As I said, adjusting our movement practices during the menstruation and the luteal phase. Our movement practices are much slower, much lower impact. We rest. Rest is so unbelievably important. During the follicular and ovulation phase, we're more outward, we're more pursuing, we can be a little bit more active as well, knowing that we really follow this really cyclical and wave-like structure within our energy. When we honor this cycle and this wave-like energy and this fluidity that we need and begin to embody it, we're going to begin to feel more in balance with our femininity, but also just more in balance with our physical body as a whole. When we can begin to plan and sort of create routines around this cycle, whether it be through I am more outward and presenting at work during my follicular and my ovulation phase, whereas in my luteal phase I'm focusing on more admin, or I'm allowing things to be a little bit more internal, or my workouts have changed, or whatever it might be, you really allow yourself not only to perform at your highest, but also connect to your depths at their deepest. You open yourself up for much deeper intuition, much deeper possibilities for manifestation as well, because if we use the magnetism of us in our ovulation phase to manifest, that is far more powerful than manifesting in our luteal phase, where our energy is a little bit more inwards and it's asking us to release. So beginning to understand the power of cycle syncing and connecting that to our deep divine feminine energy is really a tool for opening up, first of all, our connection to ourselves and our deep acceptance of rest and understanding of the feminine, and honoring her cycles and her cyclicalness and the fluidity that's needed. But even more so than that, it really allows us to embody this fullest version of ourselves and to experience the world in a slightly different way that feels much more in tune with how we were meant to operate as women. Suggestions, now that you understand the element of cycle syncing, some suggestions you can take with you to help you embody this and practice cycle syncing to connect to your feminine energy. The first thing is embracing rest without guilt. Now in your luteal phase, when you feel that heaviness, that earthy energy come in that's asking you to rest, I really hope that you can do so without guilt and make that part of your sacred monthly rituals. In addition to that, it can be really, really beautiful and important for you to really acknowledge the range of emotions that you feel throughout the month. It's really important that you know that there are times for feeling deeply and maybe doing deep healing throughout your month, whether that be in the luteal menstruation phase, and there may be times for excitement and feeling outgoing, and times to plan in new dates and plan in new social occasions, such as in your follicular and your ovulation phase, whereas in your luteal phase you might clear the social calendar. If you're anything like me, social calendar is clear during the luteal menstruation phase, because this is really going to help you understand yourself at much more of a depth, but also feel a lot more in tune with yourself and build a lot of self-trust within yourself as well. Obviously, something that I share and preach about is moving intuitively and moving in ways that really help you feel embodied and connected to the feminine. This is everything that we do on Soul Shala, and this is exactly what our newest series, Lunar Wisdom, is all about. We are diving into the power of cycle syncing for manifestation, but also for deep feminine energy. There's a class for every single phase. There's a workshop for every single phase. It's like a spiritual guide to cycle syncing, basically. Feminine and spiritual guide to cycle syncing on Soul Shala. But moving intuitively and connecting your movement practices to your cycle is honestly life-changing. You will see deeper results. You will see just generally more peace within your body. I'm just convinced by that so truly. In addition to this, you may want to create rituals for each part of this phase. You may have things that you know you love doing in your ovulation phase and your menstruation phase, and creating little magic in the mundane and everyday rituals. So for example, maybe in your luteal phase you have a daily ceremonial cacao. Maybe in your ovulation phase you do daily dance or something that makes you feel really connected to this. You may choose to explore the feminine archetypes of each part of these phases. Again, I talk about this so much on the Soul Shala series. We also have a blog post for each time of these phases. I'm going to link it all below, but the feminine archetypes really help us to understand this even more deeply. So I really encourage you, if you're at all interested, to go and explore. We do have a 7-day free trial as well. But other than that, those are some ideas and some ways that you can really begin to deeply embody the power of your cycle and cycle syncing into your daily practices and really deepen your connection with your feminine energy. With that being said, I just want to leave you with the guidance that, as I said, we are really meant to be cyclical beings. So I hope that this video has given you some insight into the inner workings of yourself. And I hope that you begin to explore your relationship with your body with a little bit more curiosity. At times where we may be being told we need to push ourselves to be constantly the same, to feel like we're constantly in alignment with this sun energy, this circadian rhythm, I hope you remember that we are working with a lunar rhythm as well, and we live in a world that is very much connected to sun energy, right? It's constantly wanting you to be the same every single day, wanting you to show up in the same way and be able to give 100% every single day. However, when we are constantly working at that level, it doesn't allow us to tap into the depths of our feminine being, but in addition to that, it leads to feelings of burnout, it leads to exhaustion, because we were never meant to operate in this way. And the more we begin to create space to talk about our sacred cycles, but also really honor the womb space as women, we must remember that there is not a single being that has come into this world that does not pass through the womb of a woman. When you think about it like that, our cycles deserve so much respect and so much honoring, and to be treated as sacred, because they are a portal to life when we consider it in that way. So really do allow yourself to honor that. Trust that beginning to live a little bit more cyclically, whilst it might feel very different to what you're used to, especially if you are very used to living in this very masculine consistency, constant thinking. When we move into this more fluid, this up and down, this day and night kind of thinking, it really creates opportunities for you to experience the depth and the highest highs and the troughs and the lows of your being, which is really what it is to live, especially within this concept of living in alignment with the feminine. She is up and down and highs and lows, and that is what it is to live a feminine experience. But with that being said, I really hope this opened up your eyes to cycle syncing and has got you excited to give it a try. If you want to be guided through maybe your first time cycle syncing, or if you want to understand it with even more depth and understand the spiritual processes that are going on during your cycle, and just really deepen your understanding and be guided through cycle syncing, I really recommend heading over to Soul Shallow. We have a 7-day free trial. You can have a try of our Lunar Wisdom series. You can dive into the workshops. In addition to that, there are so many classes, not just in the Lunar Wisdom series, but just generally, that are really beautiful for connecting you to feminine movement practices, but also like deep embodied feminine. So if that's something that speaks to you, I really recommend you give that a try. I will link it below. But otherwise, I'm sending you so much love. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know if this resonated. Please let me know if you do cycle syncing, if you enjoy it, if you're going to try it. But otherwise, I'm sending you so much love. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in my next video here on the channel. If you aren't already subscribed, please do. I'd love for you to stay. Bye guys.